Welcome to the ER Break Room, the University of Florida Department of Emergency Medicine's podcast. In here, we get to know each other, celebrate our achievements, and highlight our initiatives. I'm your host, Michael Petrauskas. I'd like to start by recognizing two individuals in our department who have won awards this month. The first is Dr. Jeffrey Katz, who was named one of the 2023 Quality Heroes. Dr. Katz was nominated for the Outstanding House Staff Quality Award by his colleagues for his work to improve sepsis care, and he's going to be attending the Heroes Recognition Dinner next month. Jeffrey has a joy of life that is contagious, and his patients are fortunate to have such an advocate in their corner. Second up is Miss Allison Gozman, who was nominated by staff and faculty for the Superior Accomplishment Award at the divisional level, and not surprisingly, she won. I personally am struck by Allison's professionalism, her hard work, and her creative ideas. Congratulations to both of you, Jeffrey and Allison. We're truly lucky to have you two in our department. So the first person I want to bring onto the podcast today is one of our third-year residents, Nupur Basu. And Nupur decided to wait till after everyone else matched the fellowship and now has an announcement to make of her own. So Nupur, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Welcome to the podcast. So tell us what fellowship did you apply to and where did you match?
So I'll be doing sports medicine at the University of Arizona in Tucson.
Nice. Have you ever been to Tucson before?
I have not. The only time I've been to Arizona was when I went to the Grand Canyon with the family. But I'm pretty excited. And I think I'm going to go visit in like the end of April, early May, since I'm going to the annual sports medicine conference in Phoenix as well.
Oh, very cool. Nice. And what attracts you to sports medicine? And were there any kind of influential people here at UF or mentors that really piqued your interest in sports medicine?
Sure. I guess the reason I liked sports medicine was it just really doesn't feel like work. It's kind of something that I would be doing on my own time anyway, like going to sporting events or watching various games or matches. So anytime I was out there on the sidelines, it just felt like very much at peace and it was very enjoyable. And then when things do pop up, that like little ER person inside of me feels ready to go. So I think it was just a good match overall. In terms of mentors, Dr. Altman and Dr. Kravis were both very helpful during this whole process. Dr. Altman's been around since I think before my intern year, and then Dr. Kravis was the fellow last year, and so I've covered some stuff with them. Worked with them in the Ortho After Hours Clinic. Yeah,
I love working with them on the ER side too. Yeah, they're fantastic, no doubt. Okay, you mentioned to me your dream job. Please share it with everyone because this is kind of cool.
Okay, so a dream job would be to work for the UFC and travel and cover fights. So we'll see if that's a pipe dream or if that's something that actually happens somewhere down the road.
So clearly not afraid of blood.
No, not at all.
Okay, good deal. That's a good trait of an emergency doctor and a sports medicine doctor. So that's exciting. Well, you'll have to let us know how it goes, and hopefully you won't forget us when you make it big, and you can distribute some tickets to your old colleagues and friends.
Oh, absolutely, all the tickets.
Good luck to you, Nupur.
All right, thank you.
So today's featured guest is Dr. Rose Fernandez. She is a full professor. She is the Executive Vice Chair of Academic Affairs and Faculty Development, and she's also courtesy faculty for the UF Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering. So Rose, welcome.
Thank you. Super excited to do this. A little nervous, but excited.
Hey, that's all right. I don't know. I always get a little nervous too before an interview, and I think it's a good thing because I think it focuses you in and makes you think about what you're going to say, and hopefully have a good connection with the person you're talking to.
Awesome.
What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so I want to start by asking. So first of all, your full name is Rosemarie, correct? All right. Correct. So I have to go back to like where you're from and stuff. Did your parents call you Rosemarie, or you always gone by Rose?
No, my parents called me Rosemarie. Mm-hmm. When I was younger and in sports, my teammates called me Rosie, but I've been Rose forever. But I've been called Mary Rosemary is a big one. So Rose makes it easier for people.
Okay. All right. And you seem to like Rose. That's what you introduced yourself to me when we first met. So,
Yeah, it
yeah.
works.
Okay. All right. Where, oh, by the way, I just want to say I was really excited about interviewing you because every time I've had a conversation with you, or even when I interviewed with you to come to UF, you have been very deflecting of attention from yourself. And like you're very selfless, I feel like. So this is a welcome opportunity to shine a spotlight on you and your life.
Okay, we'll see.
So where are you from? Tell me about your upbringing, your childhood.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey. My mother still lives in New Jersey. My father passed away quite a while ago now.
Mhm.
Um, and I have a brother who's a high school teacher now and lives in New Jersey, and a sister who's a hand surgeon actually now. So we're sort of an interesting bunch. And I lived in the same house when I was born to, I was not born in that house, but lived in that house until I went off to college. So Central Jersey is definitely home, although I haven't been back there for quite some time.
Okay, but your mother lives there. You said.
She does. She does.
Does she come down to visit here?
She's been to visit a couple of times, and she's been out. She was out to Seattle when we lived there, so she's gotten around.
Okay, all right. So you see, from New Jersey, and then I I heard from Dr. Patterson that you had a scholarship offer in a certain sport. Is this correct?
Yeah, so I was a gymnast many, many moons ago. It doesn't look like anything that you'd see if you go to a UF gymnastics meet now. But I almost went to the Air Force Academy actually to do gymnastics, and ended up deciding that wasn't what I wanted to do. It was, the kind of thing that when you think about it in your gut, it just doesn't feel right, and it didn't feel right. So
Hmm.
probably best. I'm not sure that command structure is my best thing. So probably best
Hmm.
I ended up not there.
Well, then tell me about gymnastics. Then you must have gotten into that as a child?
Yes, so I started out in, the usual little tap and ballet things that little girls do, but what I really
Mm.
liked was the forward and backward rolls we did afterwards. And so I started doing gymnastics and then was competing, and really enjoyed it for a long time.
Nice. Actually, my spouse and I, Charlotte, and I have gone to two meets now at University of Florida. And I had, before this season, I have never seen a gymnastics event live in my life. And we absolutely love it. And Giuliano, as you know, is
Hmm.
a huge fan and a photographer. He's on the floor for all the meets. And we've just been blown away. So, and I'm just really starting to appreciate the different events. So I have two questions about that. What was your favorite event of the four, and which is the hardest to do?
So for me, my favorites were probably vault and floor because I was more strong than anything else. So those were my favorites. And then for me, bars was always a challenge because I always had trouble developing what we called my swing. So those were my strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, so you were good, you're like really good at flipping around and stuff, or
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
I really enjoyed doing.
Okay, that's cool. When's the last time you flipped?
Oh, many moons ago. I've done cartwheels, and my kids keep challenging me, but this 50 plus year old body should not be putting itself in harm's way.
I wouldn't. You do not look 50 plus, by the way, Rose. So, wow, that's exciting. Okay, all right. So you didn't go to your Air Force Academy. Where did you go to?
So I went to the University of Notre Dame, and was there, and then I transferred to Rutgers University. My father got sick when I was
Mm.
in college, and so transferred back to New Jersey to sort of be closer and be able to kind of be there. And then he passed away
Mm.
during my senior year.
I see. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Must have been a tough time. But you're at Rutgers, and you must have studied something. What was your undergrad in? Because you didn't go right to medical school, correct?
Oh, no, I did. So
Oh,
my
you did.
undergraduate was in biochemistry.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, I was kind of on that path. So my father was a Cuban immigrant,
Mhm.
and growing up, I saw his challenges in terms of the workforce. I was about 6 years old when I remember you don't remember probably, but remember the gas lines and people being laid off, and a lot of the economic crisis really when Jimmy Carter was president. And so
Mhm.
for me, I needed to have security in my job no matter what.
Yeah.
And while I sort of thought that I'd get a PhD, somebody once said to me, you should get an MD because that's more secure. And that always sat with me. And so I couldn't imagine having a job that wasn't a guaranteed job. And as long as I do my work, I have a job almost anywhere. And so that really was, for me, the thing that made me choose medicine over a pure science career. And I knew I could always do an MD, PhD, or that type of work. So that's how I ended up where I was.
Did you a big part of your work ethic come from looking at watching your parents, or?
Yes. So my mom stayed at home, but my dad always worked pretty hard, multiple jobs to give us what he wanted us to have. And so that's a pretty big piece. I remember my dad going to job interviews and scoping them out in terms of where they were the day before, and then leaving 2 hours early to make sure that he was there on time. And so I will say that I didn't hold that all the time, but that probably is a driving piece for me.
Wow, that's cool. So you went to University of Michigan for medical school.
Correct.
Did you go? Okay, so then I read like on your bio, like the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Was that in between medical school and residency, or after residency?
So the Howard Hughes fellowship program is actually a during medical school process. So you do your first 2 years, in most cases, your first 2 years of basic science, like preclinical, and then you take time and you do your research piece, and then you go back to the clinical years.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then what did you do at Howard Hughes?
So I was in the program. I was at Michigan, but I was a Howard Hughes fellow, and my work was not emergency medicine. We were looking at neutrophil activation and how different extracellular matrix proteins would activate neutrophils, because neutrophil activation is an important thing, obviously, in inflammation. So it plays a role in cardiac disease. It plays a role in cancer. And our lab was in hematology oncology. And so we were specifically interested in certain types of cancers and individuals that had receptor deficits and how that looked. And we could study the roles of receptors using these individuals' cell lines.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So it sounds like it was bench science.
It was all bench science.
Wow. Did you get the research bug in undergrad, or when you got to medical school? When did that come in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I honestly, I would try to think back. I don't know. It was something that I thought I'd like doing, and so I did it. I didn't have any experience before then at all, really.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I thought that I would continue in bench science after I finished residency. That was my plan. And then at that time, there really weren't fellowships. There were very few fellowships in general for emergency medicine. I think tox, hyperbarics, peds, obviously, but that was really it. There really wasn't much. And so carving out a bench research career took some work. And I wasn't sold on it. So I actually took a job out of residency in Detroit. The plan was just for a year to sort of figure out where I could go, what it would look like to pursue that line. And I ended up in Detroit for, 8+ years. So not doing bench research. So it just, and that's how I think those things work a lot of times.
Wow. How did how did you choose emergency medicine, especially since you were so interested in more traditional forms of research?
I think the one thing I knew about myself was if I had a job that you could always be on, I'd always be on. And so I needed a job where when I left. And emergency medicine sort of fit that. I also liked everything with the exception of I even liked my psych rotation. So I liked it all. I think that's a common thing for all of us, right? We like doing a lot of things. I really enjoyed surgery. But the pieces I enjoyed was going to the ED and doing the evaluations, not necessarily the procedural piece in the OR. And so, and somebody said, if you don't absolutely have to be in the OR, then you should really reconsider surgery. And that's what I did. And so I ended up in emergency medicine.
I see. I gotcha. And then, okay, so then you do your medical school residency was at University of Cincinnati, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then and you said you went back to Detroit after
Mm-hmm.
that. And at that point, did you start getting into your kind of your research areas of expertise?
So I started out just with a full clinical job.
Hmm.
And that even that felt so much better than residency, right, in terms of work and things like that. And so I had a model from Cincinnati about what attending should do in terms of teaching and those types of things. So I was like, well, what do you need me to teach? What do you need me to do? And this might make some people chuckle knowing me now, but they were like, well, if you want to give this lecture and do this and that. And so I did this and that.
Yeah.
And pretty early on, there was an opening as an assistant program director. So I actually was in that role. And then several months after that, the person who was supposed to run it wasn't even ours, it was a simulation center at our Allied Health building. That's where the simulation center initially lived. They
Hmm.
said, hey, we need somebody to run this. And our chair at the time had enough forethought, because this was 2004. So simulation was
Wow.
like not a thing,
Right.
to know what it could mean if we ran it and we had access as a
Hmm.
department. So
Hmm.
I said, sure. So knowing nothing about any of it, I stepped into that role, and that's sort of where it kind of started for me.
Wow, that is so fortuitous. Like just stepping into that without any background or knowledge, and then it becoming as huge as it is now. That,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what happened was I identified a course that I could take, and I thought the course was going to teach me how to actually run the mannequin.
Mhm.
We had this super complex mannequin there that Dr. Patterson and I we sort of laugh about, because nothing needed to ever be that complicated. And she was already ahead of me in simulation, but she knows exactly what I mean. I thought I was learning how to run that. And what I was actually learning how to do was to teach teams and teamwork using simulation. That's what the course really was geared toward. And so I learned a ton, but that's where I got in the idea of doing research in that area, because it was like a light bulb moment when people started to talk about teamwork. And I thought about all the things that I saw go not quite right. And it was
Mhm.
almost always not about an individual. It was almost always about either the team or the system not functioning the way we really want it to, or the way it should, to be effective. And so that's where I started thinking, hey, I can do this research. And it sort of built from there.
Wow. So it came from the simulation experience there and what you were observing naturally led to the topics that you wanted to explore, it sounds like.
Yeah, yes. So
Yeah.
my research isn't really around education per se, as much as some of our faculty, that's their piece. Mine is more
Mhm.
around understanding how teams fail to or successfully complete their task and mission.
Wow, that's cool. And so okay, so then just in talking to Dr. Patterson and you've both talked and educated me a lot about human factors engineering, and I don't think most people understand what that is. And I kind of knew about it because I was a civil engineer as an undergrad, and I had friends who were in industrial engineering. And I see, you're a faculty, a courtesy faculty in the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering. Can you explain like how that became part of your research or how you got into that, and what that is, maybe just for everyone?
Yeah, so for me, my focus is really on the teams aspect of human factors, but the idea of human factors engineering is how humans work within their system environment to execute their work. And so when I started thinking about this teamwork thing, I sat down at a computer and I did what many of us do when we want to understand something. I did a lit search. At that time, there wasn't like Google Scholar and things like that, but I went to PubMed and I did my little search, and like thousands and thousands of articles popped up. And I tried to read them. And if anybody's ever tried to read an article in the social sciences, which is kind of human factors, even though it's engineering, it's kind of on the social sciences end, they're like 40 pages long. So I used to print these out. I'd sit and I'd try to read them, and I needed like to keep a list of terminology next to me so I could try and understand them. And I quickly realized that I was out of my element. I did not have the expertise. So I actually cold emailed someone who came up in some of my lit reviews, who happened to be at Michigan State University, which is about an hour and 15 minutes from Detroit. And he happens to be the leading expert on teamwork in what we call action teams. So the teams we lead are considered action teams because they come together quickly, often ad hoc. They don't have prior experience with each other. So it really is a special kind of team to study. And he was interested, and I went up there, and at the time, just so you know, I had like VHS tapes of simulations. That's how long ago it was. And I brought these VHS tapes, and I said, this is what we do. Is there something we can start to study? And that started about a 15-year collaboration with somebody who was actually an expert in the things that I wanted to study and understand. Because I think without that, I would have never gotten to the place that I am. Because I wouldn't have had the expertise.
Wow. Is this the person that you and Dr. Patterson have both spoke of who sadly passed a few years ago?
That's someone different? So yeah, that's that's Bob Wares, and and he is just extraordinary. I mean, his expertise is a little bit more on his expertise is everything, honestly. This gentleman was amazing, but on the systems end, which is where Dr. Patterson's expertise sits as well. She's really more of she's interested in systems level stuff, whereas I'm like one rung down, if you will, and looking at teams, but we share the same language. But Bob was amazing. When I was in Detroit, there used to be a grant that was co-sponsored between SAEM and an organization that doesn't exist anymore, but it was called the Emergency Medicine Patient Safety Foundation, EMPSF. And they had a grant that was like $50,000 or something. And I wanted to apply for it, and I needed a mentor. And so not Mary, one of my faculty said, well, I'll reach out and I'll connect you with Bob and see if he'll do it. And like never talked to me before, had no reason to help me, but agreed to be a mentor on my grant. And, and he knew everything about everything. When you would ask him, I remember asking him a question about skill decay, and him sending me this seminal article from like 1940 something. And, it's like, obviously like mimeographed at some point and all those kinds of things. But he just knew everything about everything. And he was just an incredible giving person and knowledge base.
That's so cool. That's a neat story. I like that. I like that a lot. I like people like that, where they just have this encyclopedic knowledge of topics or subjects. That's just so Bob Weir was a mentor to you, correct? And this other gentleman at Michigan State, or a woman, was it? Who was that?
Yeah, so that's Steve Kozlowski. So he is a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology. And yes, I learned a ton working with him. Me and my team brought the medical expertise. He and his team brought the psychology piece. And, it took a long time for us to kind of build a common language because we talk about things and mean different things. But we were able to, we had multiple grants together, published together, and it was really a fruitful relationship. And even when I moved to Seattle, we kept writing grants together and things like that. So we were able to collaborate over distance.
Wow. Is he still a mentor of yours? Or I guess at this point, do you have, at this point when you're still into your career this far, do you have people that still mentor you, or are you?
Yes, I do. So I have a coach, which I can talk about that a little bit.
Sure, I would love to hear about that.
Definitely have mentors, and my junior faculty mentor me too, because whether they know it or not, when I, am able to look at how Nick Maldonado teaches, or Meredith Thompson makes decisions about curriculum, and all of you, whether you know it or not, display something that I would like to bring to my work and life. And so absolutely. Dr. Patterson's, I think I could say, is a formal mentor. Mark Siegel, who is our senior associate dean, is definitely a mentor for me. I think you always have those people.
Wow. And I read that you're a UF master mentor. So you actually took specialized training in being a mentor, correct, at UF?
Yeah, they have a course, and I recommend it to people. It was interesting because our cohort was almost exclusively PhDs. I think there was one other MD.
Hmm.
So they were focused on very different things. However, it was important for me to remember that our world is just one microcosm of the university. And
Mhm.
so it really was a reminder of what it means to work with graduate students, and that mentorship of them looks different than a resident, and those kinds of things were very, very helpful.
Oh wow. That's well we all appreciate it, and I can say at a personal level I've already so much benefited from your mentorship, and so thank you for passing it forward, I guess.
It's a joy. It is.
Well, I thought you can enjoy it. Yeah, you do. I know you do. You really do enjoy it. I can see that. So tell me, okay, there's another program that you are part of this year, and when I read about it a number of months ago, I was just blown away. Can you talk about the executive leadership in academic medicine, the ELAM program at Drexel, and your
Yeah.
experience there?
Yeah, so I'm 2/3 of the way done.
Congrats.
It's Thank you, because it's been a
Hmm.
journey. So it's a year-long program for women in academic medicine, and I think there are three of us in emergency medicine that are part of it. Um, but many of the women are in, all sorts of other specialties. Some are PhDs. So it's a really varied group. And we get together, we have 3-week-long meetings, and then we have coursework that we have to do in between. And we're put in learning groups. So we have to do little projects, and we did a simulated budget for a medical school and those kinds of things. So it tackles all sorts of topics that are important to leadership.
Yeah.
And I've learned a ton. It is a lot of work, a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I emphasize I'm 2/3 of the way done. But as an introvert, I've really worked hard to try and do my networking, because I'm a terrible networker. It's something that I desperately need to improve. I'm the person like standing against the wall watching people go by, but it's sort of forced me out of that comfort level a little bit.
That's good. And I this is a huge honor too. Like I think that I don't know if people understand. Like do you have to be nominated for this, or how does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the college can put forth as many as 2 people a year. So I applied, and I was really lucky enough to be selected as one of the 2 that went forward, and then I was lucky enough to be chosen to participate. So it's definitely been something that I think it will be somewhat career changing,
Yeah.
and some ways validating. You get to realize that everybody's trying to work on the same problems you are, and B, everybody has different types of knowledge. So when people start talking about research things and others are like, I have no idea what that is, I'm like, I do. Likewise, when they start talking about some of the finance and budget pieces, I've really spent a lot of energy trying to learn that. One of my mentors now is Scott Sumner, who's the CFO of the college.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I've really worked to try and build that knowledge piece, because that has never been part of my experience at all.
Right. We have no, as emergency doctors, we have no training about budgeting for departments and things like that. Right. So yeah, but once again, it's so cool that you're doing this, and you're completing this program. I know our dean went through the program as well. I had read, correct?
Yes, so, I think we have like, I think 10, maybe more, what they call them elums. So yes, so we have a fair number of people here who have done the program, and the dean was very kind and had a lunch, so I could meet all of those folks, and it was great to talk to some of the other women in the program that were at our institution.
That's incredible, Rose. So you've a lot of work with that, obviously, and then I feel like you wear so many hats in our department and outside the department. I mean, you have your research, you actually do work shifts now. I mean, and then you've got, you do our faculty development and mentorship, and then do you have 6 active grants right now? Is that?
I don't
How many do
think
you have?
it's quite six.
6?
I think I have probably 4.
Okay.
But yeah, and things ebb and flow, right? So
Yeah.
the world, you can't do it all. I tell everyone, like, you can't do all of it all the time at the same time. And so I've been really lucky that sometimes something sits for a minute. There's more I'd always love to do with faculty development, and I'm going to try to win the war, not the battle. So it's, you do the best you can. I have been much less involved in actively writing grants. I used to put in 2 or 3 a year, and I just can't do that now, and that's okay. But I'm doing stuff that I really like doing right now, so it's all good.
There was something that you had said during our faculty orientation that I really liked. It's something that I think your husband says to you, or you say back and forth, or it's a saying that I thought was wonderful for getting stuff done. You got to share it for everyone because
is that the how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Yes. Yes. I had never heard that, and my husband started saying it to my kids, and so now it's something that I use because we all think we have to do everything right away all the time. And the truth is, we are all works in progress, and so we're all trying to eat that elephant, and we probably never will, right? But that's kind of, I still use it with the kids. It's the same as, like, you can't do it now, right? Like, you don't know how now, but you will. And so it's just about helping people get to that point where they can do it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So you mentioned your kids and your husband. So tell me about your family. I hear football and track and field play roles in the family.
Yeah. So my husband played Division I football. So I always knew that if I had boys, which I have 2 twin boys, that they'd be involved in football. That's what he played. That's what his father played. That's what their uncle plays. So they're very involved. They've been playing since they were 6 years old, which looks like bobbleheads, like kind of running down to the field and crashing into them. And then their shoes become untied, so the refs have to tie their shoes. It's pretty hilarious.
It's really
but
cute. Yeah.
They're now freshmen in high school, and now, like, play for real. And they also, football season's over, but they run track. So both of my kids throw javelin. And then my one son is a sprinter, and so he also runs the 100 and 200. Wow. So we just finished indoor season this past weekend. They don't throw javelin indoors for obvious reasons, but their first meet for the outdoor season is on Saturday. So excited about that.
That's going to be exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever get nervous watching your boys play football, like the hits or anything, or?
I mean, you can kind of always tell if somebody got hit hard, like in a bad way. I mean, they're okay. They do fine. It makes me a little anxious, but they don't ski. They don't ride their bikes down the street. So, like, in the grand scheme, I mean, I know people have their feelings about football, but my kids know how to take a hit. They know how to fall, and so it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and my one son had a broken clavicle, and that was 7th grade, and that was our first football injury.
Okay. My mother would watch my brother played football, and she would go to his football games, but she wouldn't come to my wrestling meet. She hated watching wrestling for whatever reason. It was too violent for her. So, but I don't know. I guess everyone's got their preferences, I suppose.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So what makes, I guess I didn't ask how you ended up at University of Florida, but I think it has to do with your research and right, correct?
Yeah, so I first ended up in Jacksonville, and that was when I was recruited there. Bob Wares, the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, was there. And it was really the first opportunity I would have had to have a mentor in my area of research in emergency medicine, which really makes a big difference. And unfortunately, he passed away right before I got there. And so I was in Jacksonville, and at the time, Adrian Tyndall was the interim dean, and Mary Patterson was coming over to run the simulation center. And actually, just to give you an idea of how how great Mary is, she was like, you should apply for the dean's position. And I was like, no, that's your job. No, thank you. For many reasons. The last of which is I want to compete with her for a job. But they wanted to, let me back up just a minute. So simulation centers get accredited from one of our organizations, and you can be accredited in multiple areas. So teaching, assessment, research, and systems integration. And so to have the research piece, they really needed a research director. So it worked kind of well because the institution was very motivated to get accredited, and they wanted to be accredited across all four, which there are only a handful of places that have that, and we're one of them.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I was brought to kind of be that piece of things.
Very cool. And then on the flip side, what do you think, now that you're here, what do you think makes our department, University of Florida Emergency Medicine in Gainesville, what do you think makes us special?
Oh, the people. That's so easy. Our people are so amazing. I don't even know how everybody does what they do. I'm floored. Last year I was at the chairs meeting, and I can't even remember who sent it. It might have been Connor Nichols sends me this text that has a picture that Tierra Smith drew. It's like a charcoal or pencil drawing. Amazing. Really? Amazing. And I was like, who knew? Who knew she could do that? And then you have Giuliano with his work. And and then there's just how hard people work. Just how selfless and how hard they work and how much pride everybody takes in what they do. And, you have the education group who, puts themselves in front of the residents and says, you're not, protecting them, making sure they graduate as strong, confident physicians. It's all over the place. Our operations, our freestanding faculty work tirelessly in challenging conditions. I'm always amazed. So that's a no-brainer. It will never be the place. It will always be the people.
I love that. That's great. I love that. All right. Final thing. What about any hobbies or favorite restaurants you want to highlight?
So David Crabb here introduced me to Alpen Bistro, and that is probably most like your typical Seattle restaurant, which, I love Gainesville, but let's be real, it can't match the Seattle food scene. But I really like that place. And then we live in the Northwest, like in the Northwest side. Mm-hmm. And my kids love Crafty Bastards. So we end up there not infrequently either, or with their takeout. It's a bar, but they have a pretty decent beer list.
I will definitely have to check those out.
Yeah, that one's Alpen Bistro is really good. So those are probably my favorites here. Hobbies, honestly, I'm just about every weekend I'm at some sporting something. So I am perfectly willing to admit that downtime on the sofa watching reruns of The Office with my one son is a hobby. I like to cook, but not when I have to. And since most times I have to, I'm not as exploratory as I'd like to be.
Those are hobbies. Kids, sports watching, and reruns. Those are totally acceptable hobbies.
Well, because that's what they are.
Well, Rose, we are so lucky to have you as our faculty development person and our colleague and mentor. So thank you for coming on here and sharing so much about yourself and your life.
Well, thank you. You're doing this. This is great. I know it's very much loved and appreciated. So thank you for having me.
That's all for this episode. Special thanks to our chair, Dr. Mary Patterson, for supporting this podcast, and to Dr. Giuliano Deportu for composing our theme music. I'm Michael Petrauskas. Be well.